Hey everyone, good afternoon. It's 1 p.m. We just got the closing bell for February 6th, and it was another choppy day, mostly going sideways. So we didn't get the directional movement that we were hoping for. The longer this goes, the longer it's more likely that we'll just chop sideways into that trend line that we've been looking at, and then we'll see what happens from there. But today, after market, tomorrow before market, and then on Thursday, there are some more pretty significant earnings coming out. So we'll see if that gives us any volatility. We'll see if that gives us any directional movement. If it doesn't, then it might just be chop fest the into the trend line and maybe through the trend line. So let's take a look at what that might look like, because if that's the case, there's not going to be much to talk about for a little while. So over here, we can see that we closed up 0.29 on the SPY, but really that's just sideways movement the day before. So yesterday we had down 0.36%, now up 0.29%. Really, we're just chopping this very thin range, and you can see how tiny these bars are and how the body is even smaller. So we're really kind of getting squeezed in terms of our volatility right here. That's classic consolidation. If we look at our Keltner channels, we can see that we came up and touched that +3 and then just started chopping sideways. And if it might take a week or so for this +1 ATR channel to move up in order to touch that sideways movement if we do continue sideways. So it's possible that we're just going to chop sideways for a little bit. And again, over here, if we stretch this out further, I mean, maybe I should do that. Okay, we're looking at about a 1 week time frame for it to chop sideways and touch this trend line as well. So those two are in agreement. Hopefully that doesn't happen. It makes for some really boring trading. Basically, all you can do is income style trading, certain types of spreads, iron condors, things like this that are non-directional and just make money through time decay. So time decay is you just sit on your hands and wait. So it's a lot less exciting, a lot less to look at, but if you're super busy, it can be a very nice way of trading because you don't really have to look at anything. You just wait for time to pass. But for now, we're going to see what happens with the next 2 days of earnings. Hopefully that gives us some direction because that gives us a lot more options as to how we want to invest. And again, we're in an uptrend. We're going to wait until we touch this trend line. And then for sure by then we want to have hedges in place if you don't have hedges in place already. Let's look at QQQ. QQQ, same thing, down 0.18%, down 0.13% the day before. We were just really moving sideways. We came and touched the EMA8 and came back up both of these days, and actually all 3 of these days. So since Friday, we've been kind of touching that EMA8 and going upwards. Let's see if that happened in the SPY as well. Now, SPY is a little bit stronger. It hasn't been touching that EMA8. It's been staying well above it. And then let's look at our Dow Jones. Dow Jones, same thing. For a while now, for a few weeks, it's been touching and just following that EMA up. And so this is just a very nice, steady, low volatility move upwards. Although if you look on a 3-day basis, it's really kind of sideways as well, isn't it? But overall, it is in this very slow, steady upward trend. And if we get movement back into safer stocks, more defensive sectors, then we can expect that this will continue. Low volatility, slow movement upwards in the Dow Jones, which is good news for the Dow Jones. It's more defensive for the overall markets and may imply a pullback, but of course it could just be chopped sideways as well. So after today's trading, we're seeing a little bit more likelihood of chopping sideways rather than the pullback that we have been wanting and anticipating. But we'll see. We'll have a better idea over the next 2 days after the more important earnings come out. Let's take a look at what those might be. So today after close, we've got Disney. That's definitely going to be watched Allstate, maybe McKesson is pretty big in healthcare. Monolithic Power, News Corp, a little bit in the communication sector. Paycom and PayPal are paid attention to. Paycom is sort of, it spans both finance and tech, or like online transactions. Wynn Resorts will be watched very carefully in the leisure and casino areas. And then let's say tomorrow before open, CVS, we mentioned a little bit earlier today. Emerson is kind of big. Fox is about as important as News Corp, and Hilton, Uber, Yum. We're going to be paying attention to all of those. And then tomorrow aftermarket. Today aftermarket. Oh, I've been looking at tomorrow aftermarket. So all that I said about Disney is more Thursday and News Corp and all of this. Today aftermarket, we've got Amgen, Chipotle, Enphase Solar. Okay, so we want to take a careful look at solar. Let's take a look at that. Oh, well, before we do that, let me take a look at, we didn't look at small caps, we didn't look at bonds. So let's do that. Small caps up a little bit today, back above the MA50, but we wouldn't really trust it because we want to see entire bars above the moving averages, and it looks like we're about to run smack into the EMA20, EMA8. So the likelihood of getting a whole bar completely above that MA50 isn't too strong. What this is looking like is just chopping sideways. So a lot more sideways movement in the last 2 days than we've seen in the past, especially in the large cap indices. And then TLT, we got that little bounce that we talked about earlier this morning. We said we wouldn't get too excited about it, especially if it stayed under all of these moving averages, and it has. And we also said that it might chop sideways. So if we're chopping sideways in the bond market and we're chopping sideways in all of our equities, then we're just really not going to expect to get a lot of movement. So unless we get some really big movements out of the earnings over the next couple of days, it really does look like we might really start chopping sideways, at least for a week or so. Let's take a look at our, what did we say? We said solar. We said solar, I think, just solar. So let's look at our major solar ETFs. One of them is TAN, T-A-N. You can see that TAN is in a downtrend. So down, up, down. So this is far more pronounced than the S&P 500, which is basically from here up, 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 and not really a pullback at all. So the solar stocks look like they're struggling a little bit. We are in this downtrend. Why do I say that? Because if this was the uptrend, sorry, I should grab the other point, this one right here. Okay. If this is the uptrend, then we've broken that uptrend. Now it's the down. Now we're down. So now we're looking at this. Okay. And that's following it quite nicely. It bounced up to the EM8 today. So it's looking like solar stocks might start to struggle a little bit. We can check clean energy. The clean energy looks very similar. Oops. Downtrend. We're below all of our moving averages. We have a almost perfect rainbow in our moving averages. Down, up, down. We've been consolidating sideways for a couple weeks, but this is looking like more downward pressure than upward pressure. And then we can also look at, it's more like electrical vehicles, smog. Okay, same thing. So low carbon energy ETF, it is some power companies, but it's a lot of solar or electric vehicle companies as well. So down, up, down, looking very, very similar. The difference here is that we see that we have broken below these lows right here. So that is a lower low that we're about to create right here, or wherever we bounce up from, it will create a lower low. And then this is a right here. Maybe I should just circle it. Or maybe I'll put an arrow right there. That high is lower than this or this high. So we have lower high and we're about to create a lower low. So this is definitely a downtrend. So and then we had a nice up day in in the ETF today that came close to the EMA 8. So it's not a bad entry point to move downwards. Now we can look at individual stocks within these ETFs, or we could just go with the ETF. Sometimes when it comes to the options play, the ETF, the movement, the equivalent movement in the ETF is a larger movement in the option. In other words, you get a much better reward risk ratio off of the ETF than you do off of the actual individual stock. And sometimes it's completely the other way around. So it's something that we'd want to look at a little bit more carefully, spend a little bit of time with, and say, hey, what are the top holdings, or what are the ones that are leading the way down inside of these ETFs? And then if we weren't so certain about it, we can even do a pairs trade, or we could go long the strongest one and then go short the weakest one. And then if the ETF moves up, or if the sector moves up, well, the stronger one should move up faster than the weaker one, or the weaker one might even continue to move downwards. In either case, we make money off of the difference of the movement. And then if we go down, the weaker one should fall faster than the stronger one, and we make money off of the difference in the movements rather than the absolute value of the movements. So that is probably a good way to play it right now if you're not certain, but this looks pretty certain. This looks like pretty much we're going to break down in the SMOG. I have over 70% certainty, 70% probability that SMOG is going to move downwards. TAN is probably going to move. Did I just draw these? Yeah, I just drew these. Okay, TAN is going to move downwards. Have we broken this low? We matched the low. We sort of bounced off of it, and then we're going up to that EMA 8. So on TAN, maybe I would wait 1 or 2 days and see if it bounces off of that EMA 8 and continues its path downwards. Then that would be a really good entry. And then the other one we looked at was Clean Energy, CNRG. This one's not as ready. I would wait longer on this one. So if I wanted to take action sooner, I would be looking at TAN and the SMOG. SMOG is, you could enter it tomorrow at the open, but TAN, I would wait 1 or 2 days and to see if we break below or we bounce off of that EMA 8. So those are kind of the low-hanging fruit that I'm seeing right now, because the market isn't really giving us a whole lot, because earnings didn't give us a whole lot. We didn't see giant movements in earnings except for maybe LLY and a couple others, LLY, but you can see it completely undid. We looked at this morning, right? Gapped open and we just traded straight down to actually a tiny bit below yesterday's close. So everyone who made money here just took profits. That's not really bullish. It's not really bearish because we didn't retrace all the way to EMA 8 or break through it. So it's kind of sideways. If I go close to close, it's sideways movement. So the theme of the day is sideways movement, sideways movement. How about NVIDIA? That was the other parabolic one that we saw today. So we closed down 1.6%. Basically, we closed at yesterday's open. So we completely undid yesterday's move upwards. So again, that's sideways movement. We went parabolic and now we're going sideways. Eli Lilly, we went parabolic and now we're going sideways. So sideways is looking like it's the stronger possibility right now rather than pulling back. The next couple of days will tell, but at least the picture currently looks like there's a lot of sideways movement going on, which means there's uncertainty in the market. We're really not sure which way to go, or we need to digest these big moves upwards. So SPY, we need to digest this movement upward, and then we'll wait. I also I did a more precise calculation than this ruler drawing this morning. So this morning I said that we had already moved about 25%, but actually we're closer to 20%. So if I take this low right here, that was 409.21, 409.21. So I'd go 409.21 times 1.2, that would be a 20% move. That would take me to 491.05, and we closed at 398. Okay, so we could see 493.98. Really? We must have really popped up in the last few minutes of this market. 493.98 divided by 4. Oh, what was it? 09121? 40921? 40921. That's a 20.7% move. So we do have a little bit more to go. So I put in this 510 right here, which would be roughly the 25% move. So presumably we could move up. 20% is where we start to look for a correction. And 25, we're a little bit more confident that we're going to get that correction. Recently, we have seen 30% moves before we got the correction, but 25 is sort of the average. So it's definitely possible that we could keep on following this trend line upwards. I might as well drag it out to the 25% line or beyond it so we can kind of have an idea of timing wise roughly when that might happen if we continue to follow this trend line upwards. So we still have that distinct possibility because it seems like there is a little bit more room left in the pocketbooks of the market makers. So we could still move upwards, but this pause for now is looking like we're gonna slow down on our way up or chop sideways before we resume our movement upwards. Let's take a quick look at sectors, and I think that'll round everything up. And then I'll add those solar ETFs into our sector list so we can see how they're moving relative to other sectors. It'd be especially interesting to see how they move against energies. Okay, so on a long-term basis, we're right back at semiconductors and communications. I think maybe that was the case because this is long-term, and it makes sense that semiconductors, because this would still include, as of right now, it hasn't been a year since the Magnificent Seven made its big move, so it makes sense that communications and semiconductors and technology, AI stocks, they're leading the way on a long-term 1-year basis. I'm more interested in the short term at the moment. So if I look at 1 month, it's still those three. If I look at 2 weeks, energies makes its way up there, so does healthcare. And then we have communications up here and staples, so it becomes a really mixed bag. The last 2 weeks, money has been shifting all over the place, not really knowing where to get allocated. And that's sort of indicative of sideways movement as well. So let's take a look at 1 week. Healthcare at the very top. Communications slipped down a little bit, but it's right where staples are. So still a mixed bag over the last week, or there is some more consumer staples or defensive sectors being focused on in the last week. And you can see how smog and tan are way down here over the last week. So these guys are just really, really underperforming the rest of the market. Let's take a look at today. Okay, so they're at the top today, but over the last week, I don't know that I would trust it because all it means is that we saw the movement in these, right? We saw that they all got their little bounce, and yeah, they went up 2.87%, but not quite even to the EMA 8. We had, was it clean energy or smog? I think it was smog. Let's look at clean energy anyways, though. Yeah, right up into its EMA 8, and then smog almost to the EMA 8. So basically, we had all of these clean energy and solar stocks retrace their EMA 8. They're on their way down, bouncing up, whereas the QQQ and tech stocks were on their way up, and then they're just having that pause sideways. So which is stronger? A downtrend where I'm pulling back to my EMA 8. Does that give me confidence in their continued upward performance? Absolutely not. Or versus the tech stocks or the QQQ, which has been on its way up very strongly, and then it has a pause going sideways. The tech stocks are by far the stronger one. So I'm not going to read too much into the fact that the energy or the clean energy stocks outperform today, this 1-day performance. If it has another repeat for the rest of the week and it breaks through the EMA 8 and the EMA 20, that's a different story. Right now, all we did was a 1-day movement upwards, not even to the EMA 8. So we're not going to get too excited about that right now. And we just want to keep an eye on it, see how we do. I want to keep an eye on this aerospace and just track its performance, because it will be indicative if we start moving into it, which it looks sort of like we are in the past week or so. ITA. I want more time to pass, 2 weeks, 1 month, where ITA is in this upper 1/3 or 1/4 before I really start paying attention to it. And then possibly thinking about what the real world ramifications are if this thing starts taking off. So we'll see. For now, we're just going to pay attention to those solar stocks. We're going to see if TAN breaks down, bounces off that EMA 8. Same with SMOG. SMOG is pretty much at its EMA 8, so it'd be kind of preemptive to go in right in the morning, like I suggested. A little slightly more conservative would be wait to see it actually reject the EMA 8 and go down. So the safer and more conservative way to do it is just wait another day or two, just like we're waiting a day or two in the overall markets, so that we have better data and we see how everything is going to react. And what set us off, I completely forgot, what set us down this road is that we got Enphase Energy solar stock reporting today after the market. Maybe they already reported. Let's see. ENPH. And it looks like they might have. Looks like they might have already. Well, they're not reporting it on TradingView, but according to the pricing action and the location where they put the earnings, looks like they might be in the middle of their earnings call right now. Initially very negative, then swing positive, then swing back down. This is just really volatile. It's too hard to say right now. They're probably right in the middle of that investor call, and it's just swinging back and forth, trying to find where it's going to stabilize. We go right now, 104 versus where we closed 100. So 3.5% move upwards. Is that going to bring all of these up? Well, it might be enough to bring them up to the EMA 8, and then we'll see what happens. So we really do want to wait and see how the reaction is going to be to Enphase before we look at actually making an entry into these ETFs. So that's all I've got for today. There's just not been that much change because we've just been shopping sideways. So hopefully tomorrow we get something more directional, and then we can take a look at perhaps these clean energy ETFs or something else in terms of maybe an example trade. And once we get directional, we can do a potential example trade. That's it for today. I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.